physically, but really it encounters every part of us. And we really get to look at this holistically as a church that is, I think, a real gift of getting to be Catholic and understanding how this is. So to start off talking about stress tonight, I want to talk to you and say that stress is actually a very good thing for us. It is a good thing. Oftentimes I'll have clients come in and they'll just be like, I just want to have stress-free life as my goal. And I will say, yeah, no, I'm not going to work on that goal with you. We should not desire a stress-free life because we were actually created, our bodies were made to respond to stress. That struggle would happen, that there would be times and situations where maybe we wouldn't know what to do with this. God desires our dependence on Him, and He created our nervous system to respond to stress. Maybe you've heard of fight and flight, those kinds of more intense stressful moments. Maybe you are an athlete and you've had to really stress your body out to grow stronger and be able to reach the potential that you have as an athlete. So stress is actually this really good thing for us. And it's natural for us to have this and to experience stressful situations. And here are some of the reasons why it is beneficial for us and helpful for us. First, it enhances motivation. When we get a little stressed, maybe we tend to want to procrastinate or avoid or numb, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but really it can enhance our motivation. If we get a little bit more stressed out, but we want to do well, or, again, in athletes, or maybe in school, or in just learning in general, maybe in your family, you're going through a stressful situation, and how can it enhance and help motivate your family? Also, experiencing stress for us builds resilience. We need that in our life because we are going to continue to be bombarded and have situations that bring about new things that we don't necessarily know about. And we continue to build resilience. And it encourages growth. Experiencing stress encourages growth. It also promotes bonding. Maybe, over the last year and a half, the entire world has experienced something really stressful together. And we've seen it kind of, move people against each other, but also in some ways create deeper bondings when we can connect on the stress that we've experienced together. And then finally, it does allow for a more meaningful life. For a more meaningful life, when we've had to overcome something, when we've been challenged, when we've been engaged in a different way, that sometimes stress leads us to. It really can lead to a more meaningful life. I think about the apostles when I think about that, right? Is that they went through a lot of suffering. They lived some pretty stressful years, the 3 years that, Jesus was on earth with them, and they were changing their entire lives to follow Him, didn't know where everything would necessarily come from for their income, for their food every night, for where they were going to stay. But they had that dependence on the Lord, and they suffered through that together, and it has led to a more meaningful life for them. And I think our stress can do that for us too when we experience these things and kind of have that perspective of, okay, this is a good thing. What maybe is the Lord trying to teach me through this? Where do I need to be more motivated, or where am I growing in resilience and being encouraged to grow? Where am I bonding with another person through this stressful experience that we have? Maybe it's in a class you share with someone, and being able to bond through that experience with each other. But I do understand too, stress can get overwhelming. It can flood, it can overwhelm us. If we're not really aware quite how to take care of ourselves when we are experiencing it. So I do want you to remember, your body was made for this. You were built to experience this. You are capable of being able to process through this, but it does get overwhelming. And that happens when we stop just seeing stress as an alert for us. When we start letting it be controlling. When we start allowing it to just pile on and pile on and pile on, maybe because we've ignored it for a long time, right? Where really any of our emotions, any of our physical experiences that we're having in our bodies are just alerts for us, telling us, hey, stop, pay attention, something's happening. Where do we want to go with this? Let's analyze this. Let's have some thought about this. Where often our stress becomes overwhelming is because we choose to react to it instead of respond to it. And I want to break that down a little bit tonight. So when we react to our stress, our reaction is usually, how do I run away from this as quick as possible? How do I numb this? How do I avoid this? How do I not have to feel this way anymore? Remember, we were meant to feel this. We were capable of feeling these things. So oftentimes we choose to react to it, which looks a lot like numbing and avoiding, and that can look like a various amount of things for each one of us. You know, maybe we numb by just getting on our phones and scrolling social media, and we were procrastinating, and now we still realize, oh my gosh, an hour went by, but I still have to study for that test tomorrow. Or maybe you react in the way that you just give up. Well, I'm not going to be able to do this anyways. I should just give up, and then you don't get to see that potential that you had by working through the stress of it. Maybe you start overeating, or you don't eat at all because you're so stressed out, because we're just reacting to this overwhelming experience that we're having. Maybe you, when you're feeling stressed, maybe you look to pornography or drinking or drugs as a reaction to this experience, to get away from it, to not have to face it, to not have to pay attention to it. Maybe you overexercise. All of these things, when we just react, really add to our stress. They really just make it that much more compounded and heavy on us. So instead, what I want to encourage you to do is to respond to your stress. When the alerts are going off and you're experiencing it, and maybe you're overthinking things, or maybe you're starting to even get a little panicky, a little anxious, because the stress has lingered for so long, I want to encourage you to respond to it. And what I mean by that is that, like, when you're starting to experience those feelings, to just pause and to ask yourself, you know, what am I feeling right now? What is actually going on? Where am I feeling it? Why might this be occurring? You know, maybe it's occurring because you're, starting to fear and get stressed out about failing, or disappointing someone, or not being able to say no to something, working your schedule, saying yes too much. Maybe you're just afraid of loneliness, and you're getting stressed out by not being able to connect with other people. So again, stopping. Why am I feeling this way? Why might this be occurring? And then actually asking yourself in that moment, what would actually be helpful for me right now? What would actually be helpful? What is a good response for me right now? Sometimes it may be that you have to push through that stressful situation and you have to keep going. Maybe, whether that's studying or homework, or maybe something's happening in your home life that's like, okay, I've got to lean in and be a part of this, right? But I want you to, even if you have to push through in that moment, think, okay, but what can I do for myself afterwards to kind of calm back down, to rest? Maybe you just need to go for a walk or have a dance party. Maybe making food is something that helps you calm down a little bit. And again, sometimes you may have to just push through it in that moment. And the way that you're going to respond is different for every single person. We may be able to compare ourselves to each other of oh, they're never stressed, or they never experience this the way that I do. But to actually really encourage each other to share what is helpful for you in stress. Because you have to practice certain things. You have to try it on and see if it works for you, and that being an appropriate response for you moving forward. So again, want to encourage you, stress is good, but we want to respond to stress and not react to it. React is more impulsive, think of it that way, whereas responding allows us to slow down, pause, let us ask the questions of what do I really need right now? What am I feeling? What would be helpful for me? So again, I'm not going to ever say that you will live a stress-free life. We're not meant for that either. We're not meant to have no stress. Our stress leads us to this growth and this dependence. But there are some things we can do to help prevent our stress from being so elevated and to getting to be overwhelming, where maybe then it leads into some anxiety, right? There's some things we can do. The first thing I want to say, and kind of as preventatives, but it's not really, you're not going to ever be able to completely prevent stress from coming in. So some things I want to encourage you to do is to ask yourself, am I taking on somebody else's stress? Is this actually mine? Or am I feeling it for my family? Am I feeling it for my friends? Because they're sad right now, or they're stressed about this. Is this actually my stress, or am I just taking on someone else's? Am I actually feeling that way about this class, or do I feel really confident, or about this relationship, or whatever? So seeing, is this actually my stress? Number two, and I say that particularly within like your family units. Like it's really surprising how often as kids, like and we all have our parents, that we just end up taking on their stress, right? If they're really open about that, or maybe they have a really hard job, or and we may react in the way of like, oh, I don't want to cause any more stress, but we like take that on. We start kind of carrying that ourselves. So just kind of asking, is this actually mine or is this my parents? How could I actually support this person better than just taking on their stress? Number two is sleep hygiene. I can't stress enough how important your sleep is when it comes to getting stressed or overwhelmed by these emotions that come up. And what I mean by that is like saving your bed for just your bed. Not eating in your bed, not doing your homework in your bed, not, playing video games in your bed. Like having that space that's really your body recognizes this is where I come to rest and relax and go to bed. Because if you're constantly doing a lot of stuff in your bed as like your desk, as your table, your body's not going to recognize that it's now time to calm down and go to bed and sleep and rest and be able to be there. Yes. The next thing is to create a rhythm, right? Even if you are not a scheduled person and you don't like scheduling out your day, that's okay. It doesn't have to be every minute. But it's more, what do I need to get done today? What has to get done today? And making sure there's a time in your day where you're gonna, not just a to-do list, but like, if this has to get done today, when and what time am I gonna do it? And then recognizing if it wasn't able to all happen, that's okay, you tried. But creating some kind of rhythm to help with stressful things when they're coming up. The fourth thing is being able to ask ourselves, like, will this actually matter next week? Will this actually matter in a week from now? There's a lot that's happening, when we get on our phones and on our social medias and connecting with our friends and people all over the world in that way. But we can get really riled up about a lot of things and really stressed out about a lot of things, and just asking ourselves, will this actually matter a week from now? And seeing, and asking if it's like no, does it deserve as much energy as I'm giving it right now then? Doesn't mean you're not going to care about it or not figure out a way to support that, or maybe say some prayers for whatever that situation is that's going on, but it may not deserve as much energy as you are giving to it in that moment. I know for me, I can get really riled up, and in my thoughts, I'm just like, oh, here's all the action I'm going to take, and then I'm like, okay, that's actually not plausible in my life. What can I actually do to help support this cause or this situation or something like that? And then the final thing is as a preventative, as something as stress is starting to build, is to find who is that objective voice in your life. Maybe it's a core member, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a peer, but really who is that good objective voice in your life? And maybe it is your parents, and maybe it's not your parents, but who can help shed some light on the situation, who you feel comfortable being able to share, like, am I overly stressing about this? Can you speak some truth into this moment in my life right now? I love in Proverbs 12:25, it says that stress in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. But a good word makes him glad. And so sometimes in those experiences, the objective voice is scripture, right? Maybe you have a really good prayer life right now, or maybe it's something you're working towards. But turning to scripture as an objective voice, to be able to have that good word spoken over you, that truth spoken over you in those moments. And then a couple things, just even like as Catholics, we have such a treasure chest of amazing things that can help us with all of these emotions, these mental weights that we have that come into our lives that we don't necessarily control. Sometimes we have no idea where they're coming from, right? But really opportunities to pause and to respond, like in adoration, right? That Jesus remains with us always. That we can come, and you guys have such a beautiful chapel here, to be able to come to pray, practice some breathing, grounding techniques, right? To gain that perspective. I really love when I'm feeling really stressed out is to look at some of the lives of the saints. Two of my favorites are St. Damien and St. Marian Cope, and they lived in Hawaii amongst the leper colony and took care of them and helped teach them the faith and encourage them in their journeys. And I don't look at them to think like, oh gosh, well, their life was way more stressful than mine. I don't deserve to feel the way that I do, or I shouldn't feel the way that I do. No. I look to those stories because they just give me perspective of hope. Like, okay, I can endure this too. I can lean into this. I can have hope in this situation as well, as these people were able to as well. Again, not for a comparison to look at like, oh, their life was so much more stressful, therefore I can't feel what I feel. Not to negate what is going on for me, but instead to keep bringing me hope, to keep giving me some hope. And silence. I strongly encourage some silence. A lot of our stress comes from overthinking, from overanalyzing things. But to really have that silence, to maybe journal or just have some time where your brain can rest is super important. And if this is something that continues to, if you're someone who experiences a lot of stress and maybe it has come to be more of an anxiety type thing, don't be afraid to get help, in therapy or with a counselor at school or with a core member to just be able to talk through some things, if that would be helpful for you, if you're not really knowing how to really manage the stress that's coming. And so I have two scriptures that I want to read to you guys as well. And honestly, y'all, if you Google like scripture for stress or anxiety or just struggles and hard times like that, there's ample amounts that will direct you to where to go. But in Psalm 94:19, it says, "When the cares of my heart are many, your consolations cheer my soul." So often we don't go to Jesus first of all, but it says right here, that your consolation cheers my soul. Are we looking for those things, those simple things, the connection with the Lord to cheer our souls? And then 1 Peter 5:6-7 says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that in due time he may exalt you. Cast all your anxieties on him, for he cares about you." Cast all your anxieties on him, for he cares about you. And I just think that's so important for us to remember, that in these times and in these experiences, we might try to just have so much self-resilience, or again, we just react by numbing or avoiding these things, but the Lord really cares for you in these experiences that you're having. Not in comparison to anybody else, but because you're his son and daughter who he cares about intimately and uniquely, and he's with you in these situations, in the stress that you may be experiencing, and will provide help in those situations. Awesome. So that's what I have for you tonight on stress. But I do, you can, sure.